since one of the scripts I'm going to be rewriting after the one I'm now writing is set in the 1990s, I decided to read Generation X by Douglas Coupland. This was published in 1991. This was considered the Bible to understand my generation, and here I am reading it more than 30 years after I should have. And I'm here to tell you, it's not a very good book. It really is not a very good book. It has just all not very smart snark and a bunch of kind of sneering, and it frankly has not stood the test of time, and it's a bit embarrassing. It only captures a tiny sliver of my generation, really the Toronto, Southern California sector, which is extremely minuscule. But it does have its moments. There is one point where one of the characters, Dag, just decides to fuck off with his job and go to the Nevada desert. There's another funny moment involving one of the characters sitting for a family portrait. But it relies on not very inventive humor, and it repeats that. For example, one joke involving, I'm a lesbian trapped in a man's body, which is repeated, I think, 3 times in this book. It has not stood the test of time, but it is interesting to read as a kind of missing link between Bret Easton Ellis and Chuck Palahniuk, who I think with Fight Club did a much better and far more searing and pointed job of critiquing the go-nowhere existence of Generation X, which is worth considering because, you know, the generation before us didn't really bitch like this. But I do think that Douglas Coupland was a victim of marketing forces who were desperate to cash in on how to manipulate my generation for maximum gain. And much like OK Soda, if you know that, this book served as a kind of bullshit attempt to get hip with my generation when we were not going to fucking have it. I honestly think that movies like Reality Bites or even Suburbia, which is based on an Eric Bogosian play and was directed by Richard Linklater, very underrated movie, they were far more accurate about capturing Generation X than Douglas Coupland was. But I am going to read a few more Coupland books because I am kind of curious. I know that he probably found himself as the unwitting, reluctant spokesman, and there was a time in which people hung on his every word, and then they realized, oh, he's just saying the same thing over and over again, and they kind of just disregarded him. But I'm going to read some more of his books just out of morbid curiosity, but this really ain't it. I'm both glad that I read it and not so glad that I read it, but it's a fucking time capsule.